G'day everyone. So this video today is just going through drawing an object in Autodesk Fusion 360. And in the case of this one, we're going to just start with one of these practice parts here, which you'll get to do. And we're just going to work on the packing block up in the top left corner here. So you can see it's got a bunch of dimensions on it that show us different things about it. We can see the overall size and shape of it. We can also see how thick it is and things like that. So that's the one we're going to draw up today. To start with, rather than starting to draw things in with dimensions, we're just going to start by drawing the basic shape and we'll move on from there. So you can see I'm in Autodesk Fusion 360. I've started up a new design here. It's got untitled up here, so you can see I was also working on another one earlier. And I'm going to create a sketch to start with. In the case of this object, because I want to draw something that comes out from an upright plane, I'm going to select this plane here. Now my very first thing in this case is to use the line tool just to go and draw out the general shape of the object. So I'm going to start in my center point, click once, and I'm going to drag outwards, then I'll probably go up a bit, so I think that's the way it went on the drawing there. And I'm just going around a basic shape here, and you can see here in my basic shape that all my lines are blue so far, apart from the very bottom one. And what that tells me is that all of my lines are unconstrained at this point in time, or certainly all the blue ones. They're not fully dimensioned and constrained on my drawing, or on my sketch I should say. And I've just lost my mouse, there it is. Now, I'm just using my scroll wheel to zoom in. Now one other thing I'll just mention there is when I was using that line tool, you can see that I right clicked, and now right clicking on a tool gives you a bunch of options about that tool. If we right click at any time, we can always go back and use the same tool again. We can delete things, cancel what we're doing, move or copy things, and we can alter things in our sketch. We can start a press pull, which is like an extrusion. We can make a hole. We can do all this sort of thing just straight from this right click. In this case, I'm just going to click cancel because I don't want to be in that tool right now. If I right click again, you can see I get a bunch of different options. So it gives me a whole set of different things that I can get into very quickly, rather than moving my mouse up to the ribbon up here. So for example, if I wanted to get straight into sketching a circle, I can just get to it through these menus here, which, you know, depending on what I'm doing, probably will be a lot quicker. Now let's go back and have a quick look at the drawing and have a look at that object. Now we can start to see some dimensions. We've got 40 millimeters, which takes us from this edge here to this edge here. Alright, we've got 36 between this edge here and this one up here, and 24 between this one and this one. So let's go add all those dimensions in. Alright, I'm going to hit the D key on my keyboard. That gives me my dimension tool. And this time I'm going to be clicking on lines specifically to add dimensions in between them. I'm just going to click here and I'll just have a quick look and see what that dimension on that one was, which was 40 millimeters. So I'll go ahead and add that one on. And the reason I'm doing it this way rather than the way another way we could do it is that by going ahead and dimensioning like I am off a shape that's already there, it makes things a little bit easier for me. So I'm still on my dimension tool. I'm going to add in the next one and just have a look at what that one was. 36 for this middle dimension. Alright, you can see things have gone a bit funny there for this one here. Now before I move on and dimension between these two, now it will dimension in the wrong direction. So I'm just going to exit out of my dimension tool. And I'm going to copy that line. I'm just going to drag it out. So that was a pretty easy task. We'll hit OK. I'm not really fussed about the distance at this point. Just needed to move it. And we'll pop in our final dimension between those two lines. So going back to our drawing again, just have a quick look. And we're 24 on that one. Alright, so that's dimensioned out those distances between those points. Next we need to give some of these different places a height from the baseline here. So let's just have a quick look at what those heights are. So the first one is 18, then we've got between that first one and the top one 34 millimeters, and then 22 millimeters between the top and the left one, the right one. So let's go back and do that. So we've got our 18 to start with, between those two lines, type that in, 18. Then we've got our 34, I believe it was, and I'll double check this in a moment. And then finally our 22, I believe. And again, I'll check that in a moment. That's giving me a bit of grief there. Let's try it again. D, and then between those two places, and we'll give it, I think it may have been 22, so we'll just type 22 in there. We'll just double check that again. Oh, this isn't working very well. Okay, so 22 between those two, 34 there and 18 there. So that looks about right if we have a look at those two shapes. We're pretty close there. Alright, the other thing we can see now is that all the various lines on this sketch have become black, which means everything is fully constrained on my sketch. And you can see what I mean by fully constrained is that there's no way this sketch could get altered in any way at any point in time. Everything is defined, everything has a dimension, and it all makes sense. You can also see that we've got a bunch of little, what look like T's in the corners of this drawing. And what those are is what we call perpendicular constraints. So they are holding all these different lines. So for example, this one in this corner holds this top line and this lower line together perpendicular or at 90 degrees to each other. So that's one of the constraints on this sketch. And the other one is the horizontal constraint down the bottom, and that says that this line here must stay horizontal. And if I hover over the very base point here, we've also got a couple of coincidence constraints there. So different lines are coincident together here. Alright, so this whole sketch is now constrained and it's complete. We've dimensioned it. We're now at the point where we can go ahead and turn it into that physical shape. So what we'll do is we'll use an extrusion. I'm going to select the object that I want to extrude, and I'm just going to change my view to the top right of my little view block there. Now with the extrude tool, we've got a bunch of options here. We can start from a profile plane, an offset plane, or from an object. In this case, we're just doing a profile plane. So we've created that closed loop that we talked about. So we have a closed loop around an object there, which gives us a profile. So all of these lines are connected to each other. We can change the direction that we want to extend or extrude our object out. So we could do it to two different sides. So maybe 10 millimeters forward and 20 millimeters backwards. We can make it symmetric, so we can extrude out either side of that profile by 10 millimeters, or we can just extrude it out one side. We can select how far to, so we can do it by distance, so we can type that in. We can extend it out to an object, or we can extend through something, or all the way. So it just depends on how we're using the extrude tool at the time. We can obviously type in our distance, and if we have a quick look at our drawing, oh, seems that we closed that accidentally there. Let's reopen it. We are 50 millimeters from the front to back of the object. So that's what we're after in this case. So I'll go ahead and type that in as my distance. 50 millimeters. Alright, you can see I've now got a physical, what looks like 3D object. The very last pane here is where I can actually taper what I'm doing. So if I wanted to extrude something out at a specific angle, let's say I want to extrude it with a 10-degree taper, I can extrude it from one size to a bigger size at the other end. I can also do this in the negative direction if I wanted to make it smaller, and you can see that's what would happen if I did that. In our case, we're not going to put any taper on ours, and we're creating a new body. Now we could do things like new components, we could intersect, so we could make an extrusion intersect with an object that's already there. We can cut through an object that we've already produced when we extrude, or we can join into one. So it just depends on what we need to do. In this case, we're just going to create a new body, and when we're happy with what we've got there, happy with all of that, I can press OK on the dialog box, and there we go, I've got my object. And I'll just click on the top corner there, and should place it back in a home view. Mouse isn't working again. There we go, home view. Alright, and you can see there's that 3D object. I've completed that one. I've completed it to the dimensions that were described, and it is a fully constrained object in the sketch originally. And if we just have a quick look in the browser here, we can see we've got the original sketch there, which we could edit. We've got the body itself, which is the object that we've just made. And down along the timeline here, you can see we've got a sketch, and then we've got an extrusion. Alright, so that's my object there. I'm just going to save this one. I'm going to call this one Practice Part A Packing Block. And I'm going to save it into my first project in my master folder. What would be a good idea at this point is to create a folder, really. So I'll create a new one, I think. It says Practice Parts A. That way all the ones from the Practice Parts A sheet can go into a folder. So we'll save that as well. Alright, there we go. I've now saved that part. You can see the name up in the top here, and it's the 0 version of that part. Thanks for watching.